Welcome back, everyone, to the Wedge 52 Gridiron podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode will be the Baltimore Ravens Divisional round preview. They will be facing off against the Houston Texans Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff at M&T Bank Stadium. Before we jump in today, please make sure you press that follow button right here on Spotify, as well as check out the Wedge 52 Gridiron on Instagram and Twitter for all your latest updates. Let's jump right in today with our opponent, the Houston Texans. In the wild card weekend, they faced off against the division rival, Cleveland Browns, and they beat them 45-14. In that matchup, C.J. Stroud had a very, very good rookie debut in the playoffs. He went 16 of 21, 274 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and no interceptions. He had some help from the supporting cast of Devin Singletary, who had 13 carries for 66 yards and a touchdown, as well as one of his favorite wide receivers, Nico Collins, with 6 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown on the day. That Browns defense, who was one of the better defenses in the league, clearly not the premier defense in the league, as that team, I believe, resides in Baltimore. But that Cleveland defense was exposed mightily by the Houston Texans. A lot of blown coverages, open, big explosive plays for that Houston offense. Kind of went both ways, but in this moment, we're talking about, the Houston Texans offensively. A lot of big plays. A 73-yard touchdown, I believe, for them. A couple of other big ones. Really, was effective moving the ball in most downs, except for third down, which I'll get into a little bit more in a minute here. But then defensively for the Houston Texans, Desmond King, 12 tackles for him out of that safety position. Christian Harris was all over the field with 8 tackles, a sack, and a pick 6 in that victory over the Cleveland Browns. And then cornerback Steven Nelson had 5 tackles and a pick 6 as well. In a defense, that really shut down that Browns offense. The, fairy tale run of Joe Flacco's Cleveland Browns tenure came to an end, just like, as I kind of hinted in my wild card preview, Joe Flacco's turnovers were going to catch up to him. Sitting at a 13-8 touchdown to interception ratio was not beneficial. Came back and bit him on, back-to-back pick sixes, back-to-back drives with the pick 6 that Houston Texans defense was able to capitalize on. Defense, throughout the season has been, middle of the line, just slightly above, slightly, towards the good side of that, the positive side of that, mid-pack. They definitely do capitalize on things when it is there, when the opportunity is presented to them. So looking at that Texans offense and defense a little bit more, in terms of a couple of specifics, in terms of their offense, they went 2 for 8 on third down. So, moving the ball well, putting up 45 points. Clearly, 14 of those were defensively. That's still 31 offensive points. A very good number. 30 points can win you a good handful of games. But 2 for 8 on third down, somewhat of a trend that I'll, get into a little bit here in a minute, but struggling on third down recently for the Houston Texans. And then yards, they had 356. Only 76 of those yards came on the ground rushing, 66 of them to Devin Singletary. So struggling against, to establish the run for the Houston Texans, which, can be difficult if the Ravens are able to, completely shut down the run even further than 76 yards potentially. That could really force C.J. Stroud's hand, force the play calling that the Houston Texans may have to do. That could be a thing that helps the Baltimore Ravens defense. Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, Geno Stone, help those guys, force the hand into coverage situations, and then let our guys up front eat. Madubuike, Clowney, Van Noy, always got some, 5 sacks on the season. Let those guys eat and, prove why they had the most sacks in the league this season, as well as, some of their pressures and stuff, forcing turnovers on the back end with guys like Geno Stone and Kyle Hamilton with, collectively, I want to say 12 interceptions between just the two of them. And then 0 sacks allowed for the Texans offense against the Cleveland defense, who has, a good front line with Myles Garrett and others. But then defensively for the Houston Texans, allowed 7 out of 15 third downs, roughly 50%, just under that. But they did, hold the Browns to 0 for 4 on fourth down. So collectively as a defense, I would consider that, 7 for 19 in critical downs. So, not horrible for them there. And then 324 yards allowed, only 56 rushing yards allowed. They do have a very solid rushing defense, I believe 9th in the league in terms of rush yards allowed per game. And then they were able to get to Joe Flacco 4 times, applying the pressure there on him. A couple of, key indicators, I talked about both defenses allowing big plays, explosive plays, 20-plus yard passes or 10-plus yard rushes in that wild card matchup. 2 players that were very big beneficiaries to that for the Cleveland Browns were both tight ends. David Njoku had 93 yards on the day, and Harrison Bryant had 65 yards on the day. I looked into, kind of the, couple last weeks for them, 3-4 weeks, and see if that was kind of a trend that the Baltimore Ravens could kind of exploit. To me, it does not look too incredibly like a trend. Against the Colts, I believe their tight end had about 32 yards. Okonkwo, 2 weeks prior to, week 17 of the regular season, I think had 34 yards or something. And then the week before that, Okonkwo had like 40 yards again or something like that. Not really an exploitable trend in terms of just general position-wise. I'm sure if you look at it schematically, there is potential for higher likelihood of tight end success there. They'll leave that up to the coaching staff at this moment. Someday, the Wedge 52 Gridiron will be able to give a deep dive into that in the future here. Moving into some things that we can look at right now. Since C.J. Stroud returned in Week 17, so this is his 3rd game back. This will be his 4th this upcoming Saturday against the Ravens. But since his return, they've beat the Titans 26-3. They beat the Colts 23-19, and then the Browns 45-16. And yards, gained for that offense since C.J. Stroud's return. 312 yards against Tennessee, 306 yards against the Colts, and 356 against the Browns. That gives a magic number average of 325 yards offense the past 3 weeks, all 3 victories for the Houston Texans. Looking at third down, I mentioned they struggled severely on third down. Against those Tennessee Titans, they had 3 for 11 on third down. And then Indianapolis Colts went 5 for 13, and then Cleveland Browns 2 for 8. Collectively, since C.J. Stroud's return, 10 for 32. Didn't look into the exact down and distance, average yards to go for that, but a potential thing, that's kind of potentially because of the rookie quarterback situation, maybe just not having that experience, that know-abouts, potentially facing a lot of high pressure rates on third down. Regardless, the past 3 weeks, they have gone 31% success rate on offense for third downs. Definitely something that the Baltimore Ravens can capitalize on, getting off the field, getting the ball back into the most valuable player in the league's hand. And then kind of looking at the supporting cast for C.J. Stroud, obviously phenomenal year for him. Strong contention for Rookie of the Year. It's going to be either C.J. Stroud or Puka Nacua. But kind of his cast, Devin Singletary the past 3 weeks since Stroud's return, 53 carries for 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Nico Collins, 22 catches for 371 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, the huge performance of the week for Nico Collins in Week 18. So that's going to be his main guys. That's the 3 main guys to look for on offense is going to be Singletary, Nico Collins, and C.J. Stroud. Defensively, we have all of the pieces there to stop anyone. We saw that against Miami. They got plenty of weapons. We saw it against the San Francisco 49ers. They have plenty of weapons. Even Detroit Lions, plenty of weapons. Shut them down. Seattle Seahawks shut them down. So Baltimore Ravens, if they show up to play, the weapons, we got weapons on defense too. Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Matt BK, Patrick Queen, all pro guys. So Let's find out. Let's find out Saturday, and it's going to be a good matchup between the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens. Looking at their offensive and defensive ranks for both teams so far this season, the Baltimore Ravens offense, one of the better offenses in the league. It's been a while, historically, since the Ravens have been able to say that. Obviously, 2019 was an incredible year offensively. I would say this offense is more consistent and more versatile than that 2019 offense. In yards per game, Ravens offense ranks 5th at 384.5, first in rushing yards at 156.5, 4th in points at 28.4, and 8th on third down with 42% success rate. That's a very, very good number, 42% on third down. Looking at that Texans offense, they're 10th in the league on yards at 366, 22nd in rush yards at 96.7, and then 13th in points at just 22.2, and 19th in third down percentage at 37.9. So like I said, they've been struggling with that the past 3 weeks since C.J. Stroud's return. 38% on the season, even worse the past 3 weeks at 31%. Definitely something that the Ravens need to strike on. I would imagine the Houston Texans are working a lot of third down, situations, third down schemes that they want to look at this week going against, a top-notch defense in Baltimore. I would imagine there would be a good amount of third down opportunities or challenges that Houston Texans offense faces. And then looking defensively at the team stats and ranks throughout this season, Baltimore Ravens defense, 9th in yards allowed at 328, 6th in pass yards allowed at 192, 1st in points at just 16.5 points allowed per game, and 7th on third down at 36.4%. And then moving to that Texans defense, middle of the pack, 16th in yards at 351.6, 23rd in passing yards at 234.1, 11th in points at 20.8, and where they are successful is on third down, ranking 5th best in the league at 35.7%, in allowing the opposing offense, to continue their drive. So middle of the pack to above average defense. Two main points for that defense where they do strive is third down and rush defense. Now moving into my Ravens keys of the game. My 3 keys for the Ravens to have the greatest likelihood of success in gaining a victory against the Houston Texans on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. My first key to success is going to be second/third down defense. I really mean third down, but by saying second down, you have to get in position for a favorable third down play for that defense. Keeping, third and six plus for our defense is going to allow our pressure to unload. Third and 6 plus is going to be more favorable passing down, especially against that Houston Texans offense that struggles to run the ball, 22nd in the league. That'll allow our guys to get to work. Like I said, Kyle Van Noy, Jadeveon Clowney, Justin Madubuike, allow those guys to get to work, and then hopefully force some sacks, pressures, tipped balls, things like that our back end can clean up if necessary with the likes of Geno Stone, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, etc., etc., etc. That's my first key to the game is going to be the Baltimore Ravens third down defense. My second key to the game is going to be spreading the love on offense. The Houston Texans defense struggles 23rd in the league, allowing 234 passing yards per game. Lamar Jackson, the MVP that he is, needs to spread the love. The Baltimore Ravens offensive weapons look better than they've looked in Lamar's entire career, with the likes of OBJ, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Isaiah Likely. All of those guys need to be involved in this game, to put the pressure on that struggling defensive secondary that, Lamar can exploit them. We got different options this year than in years past. If you want to double OBJ, we got Zay wide open. You want to double Zay, we got Zay Likely open. You want to play, kind of cover over the top Zay and OBJ. Both those guys can run, incredible routes, get open underneath as well. If they're not able to get open, Isaiah Likely has been very good at being that, middle of the field kind of check down tight end that Lamar Jackson loves to throw to this season. Make that pass defense work. Try and expose them like the Cleveland Browns were able to do a little bit, especially with those tight ends, David Njoku and Harrison Bryant, that we saw in Wild Card Weekend. My third Ravens key to success for them this week is going to be playing Ravens football. What does playing Ravens football mean? This means forget all the narratives from 2019. Forget all the outside chatter of 2019. Chatter from 2019. Forget the critics and in the media talking about how the starters haven't played in 3 weeks, how the starters haven't this, how the starters haven't that. Forget about all of it. Play the football that the Baltimore Ravens, play to get in this position. We have an MVP quarterback, a, top-tier defense, and an incredible, spread power type of offense that has worked very well throughout this entire season. Benefited our offensive weapons. Zay Flowers, 800-plus yards as a rookie wide receiver. Gus Edwards, 13 rushing touchdowns. Lamar Jackson, a clear MVP favorite. Play the ball that the Ravens can play. Have trust. And, go out there and do what got you in this position. That's all I have for this episode of the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. Like I said, please make sure you press that follow button on all platforms. Help the Wedge 52 Gridiron grow. Thank you all for listening so much. And most importantly, go Ravens.